Hi guys. So I wanted to add this special intro before the actual intro because right after recording the episode of today, I realized I couldn't find it and it took me several days before I could retrieve it. The hours after recording were so stressful because I kept looking for the episode and I was so worried that we were going to lose it. You know what's ironic? Today's episode is on stress. And while going through all of this chaos in quotes, I had to think back on the episode and laugh about how what I had just recorded was currently happening to me. This is just to say that this happens to all of us many times, and that's okay. That's how life is. We just have to learn how we control the situations around us when things are not going our way. I hope that as you listen to today's episode, you enjoy it and that you can take time to reflect on how these kind of stressors appear in your life and what you can do when they appear. Enjoy! Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode of Blooming Daily. I am so excited to have you join us again because, wow, last month we celebrated our 1 year anniversary and I was saying that I could not believe we were already 1 year strong. Oh. So I am glad that we didn't stop there, but that we're continuing and we're here again in the studio bringing you quality health content to make sure that you are blooming daily. Snap, 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 snap. So welcome again, and with me in the studio today is an amazing woman who I am so happy to have and who makes me laugh all the time. Let's give it up for Zelia.
Hello. I'm happy to be here with you today, Ruth.
How are you doing today, Zelia?
I'm doing well. I've had a slow, chill morning, which is nice.
Yes.
Kind of an interesting context to be diving into stress management.
Yes.
Because I've not had to manage too much stress lately, but I've certainly got memories to pull from my mind.
Yes. I totally feel that. Which is interesting because for me, it's the opposite, right?
Yeah.
This week I have felt so much stress. I have been scrambling from place to place to get things done because at one point it felt like I had more things to do than I had the time to do them. So it was just like, how do I even get all these things done, and can I even get them done? So this week was very stressful, and I thought it would be interesting to actually talk about stress management.
Yeah.
So, as you might have heard already, today we're talking about stress management and how we can implement various techniques in our lives. This is an important topic because there are various stressors in our lives, and at every stage in our life, we'll be looking for ways to manage stress, whether you're in high school or you're in college or you're working or you're married and you have kids. There's just always going to be things that would make you stressed, and you're always going to be looking for ways to manage that stress. So it's something that applies to every and anybody, and a topic I know would be very, very, very relevant for anyone who comes across this episode. So today we're going to start off with identifying stressors in our environment, because you really can't treat something or fix something if you don't even know what you're dealing with, if you don't even know what you're up against. So that's what we're going to start with. Identifying stressors in our personal lives and common stressors that people face. So I'm going to kick this episode off by asking you, Zelia, when you think of common stressors that you face, maybe as a college student or just as a person, what comes to your mind?
Yeah, I think that's a challenging question that you raise, and I think that sometimes I am trying to manage stress when I don't know what all the sources are. Earlier this week on on Monday, I just felt really burnt out. I was scheduled to work in the lab from 1 to 5, and I was sitting there at the spectrophotometer, and I didn't want to do it. I did not want to be there. And I packed my things up, I had saved my data, and I went home and laid down. And that was what I needed. And in that moment, I just needed to like get some rest before kind of identifying what I needed. And that helped me identify what I needed. And once I was in a place of rest, I could take stock. But I think for me, decisions cause a lot of stress. You said in your intro how people in all these different life stages feel stress, and it reminds me that I feel stress moving between life stages.
That's so true.
deciding where to go. Course registration came around recently, and even something as small as that, even though I know I'm going to graduate, I know I'm just taking another semester of courses, can really, really weigh on my mind. And yeah, similarly, plans about the future. I know that like job applications are really stressful.
Yes.
And then, the context that you're in on top of any kind of decisions or work that need to get made or work that needs to get done. The context of interpersonal relationships can make things a lot more stressful if you're away from your friends, if you haven't really connected well in a while. I find it harder to manage my stress when I haven't really connected well with my friends in the recent memory.
Yeah. Wow, you covered a lot of things. Thank you for sharing. I think what you said about decisions is something that I can very much relate to. When course registrations came around, I met my advisor and I was like, what classes do I take? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And it's like, I had to plan the remainder of my semesters here at Bowdoin because I need to be very precise with the classes I take. And that was very stressful, knowing that if I don't take this class this semester, then I won't be able to take this other class and all of that. So I totally understand that that can be really, really stressful. And for me, another thing that causes stress is having so much to do and not knowing which one to do. Like I have so much on my plate that I don't even know which one to handle. And then I just don't handle anyone at the moment. And then the deadlines for all of them start coming and I'm scrambling because I was so stressed at the beginning trying to pick one to do that I wasn't able to pick any, and now I have to pick all of them at the same time, but I can't do all of them at the same time.
Yeah, that expectation that you want to be able to do all of them at the same time. I largely what's caused stress in my life is a dissonance between expectations and what can get done, and for me, that's almost always been my own expectations that I've made for myself, and so I've had the option, although it doesn't always feel like it, to adjust those expectations, and that's a way to manage stress. But yeah, how do you manage it when it's expectations that are put on you by other people?
Exactly.
How do you go about that?
That's a really good question. How do you manage it when it's expectations that are put by other people? Because, for example, I want to pick deadlines. If you have a deadline from a professor, how do you realistically manage this? Because sometimes you can ask for extensions, but what if you just can't? What if it's an exam? Because that's a deadline. Like the exam is at 9 a.m., so you have to write it at 9 a.m. How do you do that if you have 3 exams back to back? So I think that's something I'm still exploring, how to manage this when it's not even the pressure I'm putting on myself, but the pressure that is external.
Yeah, right. And in those instances, we have no choice but to change our own expectations of our performance on one of those exams and how much work we get to put into one of them. Yeah. No,
I totally feel that. Like this week, I got very poor sleep this week just because I had a very big midterm coming up that I really wanted to study for. And then I had other papers and other things. And so even though I knew that sleep was really important, I still stayed up very late. Yeah. And there was just so much conflict in my mind because I was telling myself, Ruth, you really need sleep. And I know that I need sleep. But then I was like, but I really want to study for this thing. And so it was just like conflict in my head to sleep or not to sleep. And I ended up not sleeping because of the expectation you're talking about, the expectation from other people that are external, that makes us adjust our own expectations of what we should do.
That's a very funny instance of the self-care stress, which is so ironic and unfortunate when we have these high expectations for ourselves of how we're taking care of ourselves. And then the stress of, I need to get more sleep, I want to get more sleep.
Yes.
Just adds to the stresses of the work we're trying to get done. And, and when it keeps you up at night, that's when it's really painfully ironic. When you're stressed about how you're not sleeping and then you don't sleep. But that certainly happens too.
Yeah. So,
Ooh,
yeah. Just even thinking about it is just a lot. So, yes. And some other things I had on my list that I know are common to other people are abuse. And I know that's a huge one. And I feel like abuse even deserves its own episode. We'll probably handle abuse in another episode and talk about how abuse can affect our health, because abuse can do a lot of things. It's just so much. It's just so much, and I can't even put the words to it. And
you know, I'm not very qualified. I'm not qualified to speak on this subject to any degree, and I haven't experienced abuse myself. But I know that an additional challenge of abuse, as compared to these like school stressors that we talk about all the time, is that you don't feel you have the same freedom to share that with folks. There's the additional stress of stigma, and when stressors are more private and you don't get to work through them with as other people as you might with school stress or, you know, very universal stressors. That's probably worse.
Yeah, that's very true. Abuse is a topic I know is also very sensitive. So I know if you're listening to this and you know that abuse is a big stressor for you, know that you are not alone and that we're rooting for you, and there are people out here who genuinely care for you and want to help you, want to provide support, love you, and are willing to listen if you're comfortable to talk.
Yeah. You are loved, and you are strong, and you are a survivor, not just a victim. And there are people for you, rooting for you.
Yes. Thank you, Zelia. The next one on my list is very interesting. But organizing events or programs or activities in general, I put this one at the top of the list too, because I think many times ambitious people want to do a lot of things. You want to put things together. You want to help people, which is totally great. You know, we want to impact our communities, but that can also be really stressful. And the thing about this is, because you're trying to help people, you might feel guilty for being stressed. You're supposed to enjoy this, right? You're giving out to other people. You should be happy. But you can also be stressed, and that's totally valid. And for me, as someone who serves in different capacities in and outside building, I can so relate to this feeling of, I really want to pour out myself to other people, and shouldn't I be happy doing all of these things? But sometimes it can get really stressful. And it's really important to acknowledge that, because we're humans and we get tired, and our emotions and all of that sometimes need to be checked. So, yes.
Yeah. I certainly experienced this year when I was putting on the Rise Untold Stories of Bowdoin Women show, which I was so happy to do, and I'm really excited to put on next year, that even when I'm working on my own time for something I'm really passionate about, that it's still work. Even if it's something ideologically I'm very excited about, it is work, and we need to recognize that, and I need to not overwork myself.
That's very true. No matter whether or not you love doing what you're doing, it can still be a stressor, and that's okay to recognize that. The fact that you're getting stressed might also mean that you need to step away, even if it's for an hour or for a day. Just close that tab and go do something else, or leave that space and go to another space, or go grab a meal with a friend. It just might mean that you need to pause, not that you need to stop that entire project, because your body might just need something different, and your body might just be tired in that moment. So I really wanted to acknowledge that even when we do things we love, things we're passionate about, we can still really get stressed by them. Another one on my list is bereavement and grief. That, again, deserves another episode, because we just cannot cover that enough as a part of the list. But yes, grieving people and grieving someone and grieving things can also cause a lot of stress, because you know that the world is still going on. People are still doing the things they're doing. Those expectations from you are still there, even if they are moved by a few days. You know, professors might say, oh, okay, I'm giving you an extra 2 days. But what if you need more than 2 days to grieve? Or someone says, oh, I'm giving you, okay, a week. But what if you need more than a week to grieve? So another one that is on the list is grief and bereavement, because that can cause a lot of stress too, and it's totally valid. And just like we said for abuse, there are people rooting for you. We're here rooting for you, and we're here cheering you on.
Yeah, and everyone grieves differently, and having grief as kind of another full-time occupation on top of your full-time work is certainly a lot to manage.
Definitely. And the final one on our list, even though the list is quite literally endless, is illness or injuries. Because when you're injured or when you're ill, that can make you really stressed. And I think this all ties to the expectations we've been speaking about. People might give you some space for some time, but there's this expectation that you're still a bit productive, or that you still show up to the world in certain ways. And that can be really stressful to think of, the fact that you're recovering, but you feel like you still have to show up, you still have to do things. And so illnesses and injuries are another major stressors, because one, you can't get yourself to do the things your body can't do in that moment. It's just unrealistic. If, for example, you dislocated your shoulder, you can still use that same shoulder to work. You just can't, right? But then you might still feel like you need to show up to the world, and that can be really stressful.
Yeah, and it's stressful to not be able to do the things you're used to being able to do.
Exactly.
When I've have bad quality sleep, when my sleep apnea is going untreated and I don't have the same mental capacity, that's really stressful, even just to my sense of identity. And with your body not being able to have the same capabilities you're used to having is very disorienting and stressful just in and of itself, just the idea of not being able to do what you're used to doing. And then you add on top of that expectations to continue doing work that you can't do, and it's a lot to handle.
It is a lot to handle. That's very true. And so now that we've spoken about these various stressors, there's one more stressor. That was the penultimate on my list. The last stressor on my list is people. Mm-hmm. People can be stressors. Yeah. You know, when I thought of this point, people, I thought of it for a long time, because I have experiences with this, and there's one that really stands out to me. Mm-hmm. So there was someone who I used to interact with a lot prior to coming to Bowdoin, and even when I newly got to Bowdoin. And I realized that our interaction went from being a pleasant one to being a stressor.
Yeah.
Because of my transition to boarding and all of that, just keeping up with interacting with that person and keeping up with the things we used to do prior to boarding was just so stressful for me. And so I realized that sometimes the relationships that were blossoming before can then become stressors because of how things have changed. And so people can also be stressors, and I really wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I appreciate that point. I myself have, recognized relationships that are going in a bad direction or that have never really been supportive, and it's really hard to manage what to do about that when it's someone you care about too. But
yes,
your dynamic and the way you treat each other is not helpful for either of you. That's stressful. And then there's the decision about what to do about that. And then we're back to our first stressor of decision making. So certainly none of these are in isolation, and they all weave together. Yeah.
I'm going to take that last point you said, because I really like that. None of these are in isolation. And I think just generally when we speak about any topic, no one factor is usually in isolation. They are usually very intertwined. When we spoke about how relationships affect our health, it's very connected to what we're speaking about now. So just know that none of these are in isolation, and that when you find one thing out, it might lead to you finding out 5 other stresses you have in your life. So it's important to recognize this and to take your time, because it's not easy. It's truly not easy, and we want you to know that it's okay to take your time.
Yeah, we're all balancing a lot, and I have found with my friends that the weeks where they're doing the worst are the weeks where you have these multiple stressors sort of from different contexts, and people might recognize, your friends in the dining hall might recognize your papers and assignments as stressors, but they don't see the family hardships that are going on at home that are stressors. And balancing those different stressors at the same time is the most stressful oftentimes.
Exactly. So I really want you to know that it's okay to take your time, and it's okay if you don't even understand what the stressors are, because many times you might not even do that.
Yeah.
So the next subtopic now is stress management. We want to look at stress management, how it looks different for different people, and then we'll give a few tips that we think could help you with stress management. So broadly speaking, stress management is like a wide spectrum of techniques that can be used in controlling our levels of stress, especially chronic stress. But it doesn't even have to be chronic stress for us to implement strategies of stress management, because whether it's just you being stressed because of an event you're planning, or whether you're being stressed because of this relationship, stress management is very important. And so we want to look at stress management for different people and how it works for different people. And Zelia and I are going to talk about our own experiences in the past few years, what has worked for us, and then how it looks different for those around us, and why we think it's different for everyone. So Zelia, do you have a few things to share about how you manage your stress?
I think the first thing that I would remind myself of, because I always have challenges with stress, and I always need to remind myself of this. I'm certainly not an expert. Is what I said earlier about changing my own expectations. When stress comes from a dissonance and an incompatibility of what I expect myself to get done and what can get done, sometimes those expectations need to change and need to relax. So keeping in mind whenever that's an option, that is an option, that I'm not locked in. Excuse me, I'm tapping the table. I'm such an inexperienced podcaster. But that would be the number one thing. And it's all so context specific.
Yes.
And you are the expert of your own circumstance and what tools are available to you. But look at me tapping the table again. I'm finding so many ways to make random noises. This is not good.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, the toolbox is broad. There's exercise, there's naps, there's meditation. I mean, ask your friends what they do, or just talk to your friends for a little while. Like escape if you have to. There's so many options.
Yes.
What about you, Ruth? What do you do to manage your stress?
That's a good question. And I think the first thing that comes to my mind is dance. I love to dance. I dance a lot. I have danced probably 5 times today at different points.
It's one of those days, huh?
Yes. No, I literally have danced since I woke up until this point. I was brushing, I was playing music, and I was dancing. I was putting my room together, and I was playing music, I was dancing. When I woke up, I had banana and peanut butter, and I was dancing, making that. I have been dancing throughout the day.
That's awesome.
Because this week, just like I said earlier, was a whole lot. And so just dancing makes me feel so much better because I am moving my body and I'm like expending energy. And then I'm listening to music, and music also makes me feel good.
Yeah.
So
I am also such a big dancing enthusiast. And I really value it for the opportunity to be creative and to express yourself a little bit. And sometimes that is the best remedy for me when I'm stressed out about all these expectations.
Yes. So dancing is definitely top of the list. Another thing, I mean, I don't do this often, but I think another thing that really helps me is painting. Well, it's interesting because before, painting used to stress me out, but now it doesn't. And I realized that painting used to stress me out because I was trying to do something grand or something really good and get all the details. But yesterday, when we had the Earth Day celebration on campus, and we were able to paint our plant pots, I just painted 3 colors. I didn't do any details at all. And that made me feel so good because I wasn't focused on getting this intricate design or anything. I was just painting. I was just stroking my brush against the pot, and that was all. And it made me feel so good because when the result came out, I was very pleased and very happy, and I went back to my apartment feeling so good.
Yeah. You say when you used to paint, you were trying to do something grand, and that's the phrase that pops out to me is trying to. You and I both can really fill our lives with these and trying endeavors and these ambitions where we're always trying to reach some goal.
Yes.
And that's exhausting.
That is exhausting.
And so often what I need is to pop out of that trying mode, to not be trying to do anything and to just be being. But it is really hard to pop out of that mode. I don't always do it successfully, and sometimes I can know that's what I need. But then if I'm trying to not be in the trying mode, that doesn't work. And yeah, often for me, being with friends and family is the most effective way to just be.
Yes.
And to not be trying to do anything. But I'm really happy that you have found that with painting too. I don't know if I've reached that level with painting, but that's exciting.
Yes. I feel like that was just yesterday. I don't know.
Progress is not linear.
Yes, exactly.
But you'll reach it again at some point.
Exactly. Oh, I love that too. Progress really is not linear. That's true because sometimes I am very stressed by painting, but yesterday was just so beautiful, and it really made me see painting differently, that I truly don't always have to try to get the details of that person's face and all of that. No, I could just paint.
Yeah, just paint. I hear you, and I've been leaning in a little bit more to journaling and just writing, and it's really exciting. It's been rejuvenating. To just write.
Right. Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned journaling, because that's another thing that helps me. And I am not consistent with that. I'm just going to put that out there.
Oh, me either.
I am not consistent with journaling. But when I do journal, I usually feel so good, because then I just pour out myself into that page. I don't know how to say page, because now I type when I journal. I journal on my iPad. I don't journal on paper.
Yeah.
But journaling does help me, because when I journal, it helps me organize my thoughts, and it makes me think of how I'm feeling. Because many times I don't actively think of how I'm feeling. I just keep on going. Keep on going. I go on to the next day. But when I journal, I stop and ask myself how I was feeling in that moment, how I'm feeling in this moment. So, yes, journaling has been a very good one for me. How is journaling going like for you?
I've not been journaling a lot. I'll sort of I've been getting more into sort of poetry and writing and creating and getting to write whatever I want. But it's interesting to me that you say the value of journaling is actually thinking about how you're feeling, because you don't often reflect on that, because I find myself on the other side of the spectrum of someone who I do think about how I'm feeling. I reflect on how I'm feeling. I'm very aware of that, and I'm very honest and transparent with that. Oftentimes someone will ask, "How are you?" And I think, I'm like, I pause a second. I'm good, I say. And they say, "Oh, you don't sound good. You really had to think about that." And it's quite the opposite. I say, no. Instead of automatically saying good in response, I thought about it, and I genuinely am doing well. I'm doing good.
That's good.
But I certainly am on the other extreme of the spectrum of thinking about how I am more often. So I'm curious to hear from you what the value you find in considering how you are feeling in that journaling is, as compared to how you are usually going through the day, not reflecting on how you're feeling.
So that's a good question, because for me, I'm able to go on for long periods without pausing. And I think that's really interesting, because I can do so many things, because my schedule is really packed. I have breakfast, and I go to this class, and then I go to this class, and then I go to work, and then I go to lab, and I keep going to like 7 or 8 p.m. in the day. And so sometimes I don't have the space to actually think of how I'm doing, or to actually fully feel how I'm doing. I know that I'm tired, but I don't really know how tired I am, because I can't really stop to wonder how tired I am, because I have to go on to the next thing. So I think being able to journal and being able to pause and say, "Oh my goodness, I was really tired today," or "I was so happy to see this person," or "that really hurt me," or "that made me really sad," or "I am missing home," things like that.
Yeah.
I hear you. Helps me do that.
I hear you on the missing home. That's sometimes one that lurks that I don't realize. And then this week I was sort of thinking, wait, when was the last time I spoke to my parents? And like, maybe that's the reason I'm feeling some sort of amorphous, like, disconnection and lack of purpose. I'm like, that's it. I miss my family. Like, I need to talk to them. I spoke to them last night, and it was great. So I guess I can relate to some of that, even though I'm usually pretty tapped into what's going on. Do you think that journaling has changed your actions? Do you ever sort of journal and then you realize something, and then that translates into a difference in action than what you would have done otherwise?
I don't know if it has like changed my actions, but I definitely think it has made me aware of the things I did, and then it has made me ask myself why I did what I did. So maybe I would be journaling, and I would say, I wonder why this happened, or I would be journaling. I remember one time I was journaling about how I was feeling about like a person, And then I was saying, I never thought of it this way. But because I was writing how I was feeling, I began to realize that, oh, wait, this is how I'm feeling. But I didn't think of it prior to that moment. So I don't know whether I would say it has changed how I behave toward certain things, but it makes me aware of how I'm behaving and makes me conscious. But I think that also kind of translates to changing, because if I need to change something, then I'm aware of it and can change it.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
Yes, I think journaling is really great. And like I said before, I'm not consistent. I journaled when I was at a conference, I think 2 weeks ago, and I journaled on the first night. And I told myself I would journal the next night. No, I haven't journaled since then, and that was like 2 weeks ago.
No, I used to make those commitments. I stopped making those commitments. There's some self-care things where routine is valuable to me. Like working out a minimum number of times in the week. I know that even if I'm not feeling inclined in that moment, I will be happier. But journaling is something I more just keep in the toolbox, and if I feel like it on any random occasion, I will pull it out. But it's
oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
I feel that. And you just led us nicely to our next point, because another thing that works for me is working out. And you know, it's really important that sometimes we know the things that work for us, but we don't still do them. I got into lifting last September, and I really enjoyed lifting. But then when winter came around, it was so hard for me to make it to the gym because I live far away. And it was so hard for me to make it to the gym and then go back to shower and then go to my classes. That was just too much. It was just not working with my schedule. And so even though I knew I really enjoyed lifting, I just could not continue lifting because of circumstances around lifting and going to the gym. But then it has gotten warmer and I started going to the gym again. I started going to the gym again last week. And I feel so much better.
I'm so glad.
I'm at the gym lifting and I'm feeling like a superwoman. And I'm feeling so good and so strong. Yes.
Yeah, Ruth getting those gains.
Yes.
Yeah. The gym example is a classic one that so many of us have experienced and has maybe even been over discussed in the popular media of the resistance to go to the gym, the knowing you want to.
That's why it wasn't at the top of the list, because it's one of them, but I have other things I do that make me feel better.
Yeah,
but it's still one of them. That's just the reality. I think that.
Yeah. And I, as much as I really value the workouts that are in my schedule, I do that because I know myself and I know personally that it helps me. But I think that fitness culture has become so popular that there's a normative expectation from the general public that like you should be doing this. And I think that can be unnecessary and detrimental and add more stress. And I always, when I'm thinking about if I want to work out, I really try to center it on my own experiences and my own self-knowledge and whether I know from past experiences if this is what I want to do, rather than tying it to this sort of general out there in the social mindset expectation that working out is good, you should go to the gym, because that sort of external expectation feels like it only adds more stress to me.
Exactly. And I like what you said now, because we don't want something that should be taking away our stress to be adding to it.
Yeah.
Because then if you make workouts a stressful thing, then it's adding more stress instead of taking away the stress. And I think that one way that has really helped me is to know why I'm working out. Not just work out for the sake of it. I work out because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel mentally strong. I'm working out of the gym and I'm saying, bring anything my way, I'm going to crush it. That's why I work out. Not because I see people on Instagram working out. No, because when you're working out just for that purpose, you won't be able to sustain it and it would stress you out.
And then it's another sort of goal-oriented stressor in your life, which if you want to have that, that's fine. But Yeah, I also approach workouts with a similar attitude to you, and I get so much more out of them by just doing them because I want them to make me feel good, and that happens.
Exactly. So I hope that you know that these things are to make you feel better and not to add stress to yourself. So if there are any of the things we've mentioned or any of the things that are supposed to be helping you manage your stress but are actually adding to your stress, maybe it's time to reevaluate. And so quickly, we're going to talk about how stress management looks different for many people, because that's the reality. And so I've said the things that work for me. Zelia has said the things that work for her. But for you, it might be something different. Yours might be meditation or just walking.
Yeah. Taking naps. Maybe, I don't know how much your podcast endorses various activities, so I won't go too long into the...
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Things that, after all, we're both underage, and I can't be endorsing anything that we couldn't do.
Oh my
gosh. But, you're all your own self-experts, and there's a whole world out there of tools that can help de-stress.
Yes, and just like Zelia said, you're your own expert. And I think it's really important to know that if you don't know yourself, it'll be hard for you to meet your needs. And so I really wanted to just put this here to know that understanding how to manage yourself also includes just understanding yourself in general, understanding what makes you happy, understanding what makes you stressed, understanding what fuels you, what makes you excited. That would really help, because it will really influence the kind of ways you search for stress management tools. Because if you don't know that staying around certain people stresses you out, and then you might keep on staying around those people not realizing they're stressing you out.
Yeah, I agree. Recently in a class of mine, we looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and that psychological model of human motivation, which I'm told Maslow has some problematic histories, and I do not want to impose this hierarchy on anyone who doesn't think that that it agrees with them. But a lot of the concepts resonated with me, and so I think taking it with a grain of salt. And the hierarchy describes sort of the physical needs, the sort of food needs. And then once those are satisfied or somewhat satisfied, there's safety needs. And then what's next after that? There's, I forget the whole hierarchy, but there's love needs, there's self-actualization needs. And, it was useful for me to consider that too, because sometimes there are actions we take, like I've used food and overeating in the past a lot as a coping mechanism that I was very unhappy with, because it's not satisfying, because the need, I think, that it was aiming to satisfy was the sort of security need because of stress, that psychological security need. But food doesn't satisfy that. Like, food satisfies, you get I got the needs confused, and like that satisfies the lower level need, and so that never actually addresses the issue. And so that is an example of sort of when you're stressed, you can just sort of blindly, want all the needs to be secured, but knowing what is actually the problem and addressing that can get you to a faster solution.
Absolutely. Knowing what actually is the problem can really get you to a faster solution. And so now that we've mentioned all of that, we're going to come to our final point, which is various stress management tips that we think you could find really helpful. I'm going to list them. We're not going to dwell so much on them because many of them are really common things that we've spoken about in past episodes. But I just wanted to put them out here because sometimes these things just slip our minds, and then we're like, oh, I forgot I could do that. So
yeah.
Oh, I forgot I could do meditation. That totally slipped my mind, you know?
Yeah.
So the first thing on my list is music, because sometimes we don't just think of music as a thing that can help us manage our stress. But when you're feeling really stressed, I encourage you to play some music, dance like Zelia.
Yeah.
and just feel good.
Yeah, do it. No one's watching. Close the door in your own bedroom and just dance. I on my most stressful weeks, I will lock myself in my room for 20 minutes, blast the music, come out sweaty from dancing.
So music is definitely one. We've spoken about exercise and meditation. Another thing is time management. Maybe sometimes you just need to move things around on your schedule. Maybe that meeting just doesn't work on Mondays at 9 a.m. because then it makes you stressed the entire day. Maybe you're supposed to push it to a 3 p.m. meeting so that you're ending your day by the time you're dealing with that issue.
Yeah, that's a good one that I don't think of often, but I think I could use a little more. I sort of think of all time blocks in my schedule as being equal, but yeah, some of those things I have on Monday don't set me up very well.
So I definitely think that time management is another one. Another one on our list is nature, just immersing yourself in nature. And I recognize that for different people, we have different access to nature, in quotes. And I say this in quotes because nature is all around us. But for example, you might be in an area that is just filled with buildings. You might be in the city and you feel as though you don't have access to nature.
Yeah.
But nature is definitely a big one.
Yeah. And I recognize that also due to the differential visibility of people engaging in outdoor spaces and outdoor activities, that can make it hard to feel a sense of belonging.
Yes.
In nature in quotes again, which is so broad. There's so many things you can do, but I personally really reap value from seeing the trees, being outside, and yeah, being in these I hesitate to say spaces with fewer people or spaces without people, because I want to recognize that these spaces have been preserved by people and by human laws and regulations. So, but yeah, quieter spaces are good for me.
Absolutely agree. And the last one on our list, which is obvious, but I still wanted to put this there, is sleep. Sleep.
Oh yeah, you waited till now to bring up sleep. Sleep is my thing, Ruth. This week especially. Sometimes I just decide to make sleep. I mean, sleep is my number one priority, and ever since I read Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep, at a very formative age, it was like in middle school, and I wasn't reading much else that was as influential as persuasive as him. I think mostly I was just watching like bad Netflix TV shows at that time. So his book like got me, and yeah, sleep is good for everything. Sleep will help you make decisions about how you manage your stress tomorrow.
Exactly.
Sleep will help you do well on that test, probably better than staying up studying for that test. Like, sleep is just great, and I'm in love with it, and I hope that y'all can fall in love with it too.
So yes, sleep. I really wanted to mention sleep because sometimes we overlook sleep. But sleep is very important.
I never do. I never overlook
sleep. Okay. Sometimes some of us overlook sleep.
No.
Not Zelia.
Even I.
Oh my goodness, yes. And there are many more tips, and we encourage you to search up tips that work for you, because just like we said, stress management looks different for different people.
Ask your friends, see what they do, try it out, even if it feels a little weird. If it doesn't work, don't do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you might find out that thing you thought was really weird might just work for you, and you might fall in love with it.
Yeah, or maybe it just works on certain days, or maybe it just works once. That's
exactly.
cool. Yeah.
At least you tried it. So,
Yeah.
yes. Amazing, amazing, amazing. With that, we have come to the end of today's episode. And I am so thankful that you joined us, because this was a really important topic. Just like all the episodes we've covered, these things are what help us have a more holistic and healthy lifestyle, because that's what's important. We don't spend, or at least many people don't spend most of their lives in the hospital. So it's really important to know the things we can do outside the four walls of a hospital that can still make us healthy, because that's really important. So thank you, Zelia, for joining me.
Thank you, Ruth, and thank you, listeners, for taking the time to play with us and think about stress and stress management that we're all going through and we're all experts on in our own lives.
Yes. So I hope you take the time to reflect on these things and to write things down, things you think might help you. And don't forget to share with others you know or think would find this helpful, and send us a comment on any of our social media pages, or even on Spotify, because you can send comments or questions on Spotify. So please feel free to send us direct comments or questions, and we would definitely get back to you. Excited for the next episode, and we hope to see you guys again very soon. Have a lovely week or weekend whenever it is you're listening to this, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Oh.